Again, as a member of the Transportation Committee, one of the things you have to weigh and balance is where's the money coming from?
It's not a question of whether or not there's money. It's a question of where the money goes. And you've been a real big spender when it comes to national building abroad.
Let's switch gears here and talk a little bit about transportation. Congressman Cravaack, shortly after you were elected in 2010, you questioned the new terminal project up at the Duluth International Airport. I think you came to change your mind on that one, but you brought up the issue of wants versus needs. And I think that's a very critical issue when it comes to transportation funding, things like highways and airports and passenger rail lines and vehicle miles, travel taxes, and things like that. I'm curious what you consider wants and needs with regard to transportation funding and how you would prioritize transportation funding from each of you, of course. And Congressman Cravaack, we'll start with you. 2 minutes, please.
Well, obviously, being on transportation infrastructure, this is what I've been working on for the last 2 years, ensuring that we have the right money going to the right projects for the right reasons. And I work very closely with Brian Mix on the airport expansion. It has gone well. I'm on aviation. I'm the vice chair of aviation. We worked very hard, and I just was up at the airport last week with the transportation chairman, John Micah. We were able to talk and take a look, and the plan's going well. I'm very proud of that. We were able to pass a transportation bill, which has had 9 extensions in the previous Congress, in the 111th Congress, with a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, and a Democratic President, wasn't able to get passed. And we were able to pass it in the 112th Congress. We wanted to make sure that the right dollars went to the right projects. We want to make sure that the gas tax is used wisely. Within the transportation bill, I was able to insert the Buy American Steel Amendment and make sure that American steel, by the way, which 80% comes from the range, goes on American projects. In addition to that, I was able to beat back the VMT, the vehicle mileage tax, which was tried to be brought up. That would actually kill us in rural districts with that vehicle mileage tax. Now, you know, in the bipartisan House agreement, what we believe is that we can make sure that by having drilling royalties associated with our transportation, so to make sure, I'm watching you, Tina, making sure that we can fund the projects that we need. Making sure our gas tax gets to the infrastructure that we need. Make sure it gets to what it's paid for. Goes to our bridges and our roads, and getting our people back to work. We were able to pass it. I wanted a 5-year bill, but we passed a 2-year bill. But to give our contractors the stability to make sure they can recapitalize, hire, and invest.
Thank you. Congressman Nolan.
You know, Congressman, the old football coach, Bill Purcell, once said that you can spin the game any way you want, but at the end of the day, your record is your record. And, you know, when it comes to transportation, you know, and your votes, I of course saw where you voted to increase nation building abroad and the military by some $4 trillion. But you voted also to cut transportation funding and infrastructure funding here. In fact, I believe the bill that you ultimately did pass, you're talking about cut transportation funding by almost a third. You spoke out against the airport terminal here in Duluth. You introduced legislation and voted to do away with essential air services for regional airports like Brainerd and Hibbing and International Falls and Bemidji. You spoke out against the intermodal transportation center here for Duluth, and you've come out against the rail passenger service between here and the Twin Cities and the Northern Express, which would go along the western end of this district. Time and again, you just didn't seem to understand the importance of transportation for economic development and creating jobs. In fact, I reminded you spoke out against the acquisition of Cirrus, which kept that company in business, creating hundreds of jobs. The fact is that our transportation system, whether it be air, rail, highways, is such an integral part of the foundation that's essential for job creation and building quality communities. And I've just been, like a lot of people, very, very disappointed to see you coming out against and speaking against and voting against the funding for so many of these essential transportation services and programs.
Again, as a member of the Transportation Committee, one of the things you have to weigh and balance is, where's the money coming from? Mm-hmm. Where is it? The Bipartisan Fiscal Commission said that in 2025, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and the interest we pay on our debt is going to take 100% of our revenue. So every dollar in addition to that has to be borrowed from someone. Majority of it is coming from China. So we were very fiscally responsible. And regarding EAS, I was the working chair. We were able to reach a bipartisan decision on that. In regards for Cirrus, as you know, Congressman, I'm on counterterrorism intelligence, and the Williams engine in the Cirrus aircraft also works in our Tomahawk cruise missiles, and I was very concerned about the transfer of technology in that aspect.
Very good. Thank you both.
Little quick rebuttal. The National Security Council, of course, reviewed the whole Cirrus thing, and they saw it that in no way did it jeopardize our national security.
It went past.
No, they approved it, and then secondly, you know, when it comes to where the money comes from, it's a question. I mean, you continually devote trillions and trillions of dollars for these endless wars of choice in this nation building abroad. It's not a question of whether or not there's money. It's a question of where the money goes. And you've been a real big spender when it comes to national building abroad, but you're not much of a spender when it comes to building our own communities and creating jobs here where people need good jobs and need good transportation.
I'm sorry, in rebuttal.
Final word,
in rebuttal to that, in regards to the nation build, we are spending 3.65% of our GDP, which is the lowest it's been since 1948 for our nation building and wars of choice, if you call it. The wars of choice, you call it, sir, are in response to 9/11, where over 3,000 Americans were killed. Now, I believe in protecting the United States. We didn't look for this fight. It came to our shores. And that's a response to 9/11 and Americans being killed.
Well, I know a little bit about the world as well, having been an export trader, and I've actually lived in the Middle East and studied the language and studied the culture. And I don't know if you're aware of it, but it wasn't Iraq that attacked the United States. It was Al-Qaeda, and we crushed them in Afghanistan, as we should, and nobody believes more strongly than I do in a good strong national defense. But that doesn't mean we have to keep doing this nation building where it's not wanted, where it's not welcome, where they blow it up faster than we can build it. And it doesn't mean we have to have a military base in every nook and cranny of the earth. It doesn't mean we have to be the policeman of the world. Every nation that's ever tried to do that has ended up collapsing a bankruptcy in its own dead weight.
Final word, Congressman Cravaack, and then we must move on.
In regards to our nation, we're planning to take $1 trillion out of our national defense. We're going to have the smallest Navy since 1915. We will have the smallest ground forces since 1940 and the smallest Air Force in existence of its history. I believe that is a detriment to the national defense of this country and leaves us vulnerable.
Well, just real quickly, the smallest...
Roger, let's move on to the next issue, please.
No, this is an important point. The smallest, in your judgment, is bigger and more than all of the rest of the world combined.
Well, now I do feel like Jim Lair. Roger?